Ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to the fourth discussion, that is Niti Aayog recommendation, Financialization of Gold. To lead the session, I would request Mr. Rugang Paranchpe, Managing Director and CEO of MCX. Well, he was not with us yesterday, but we are happy to have you today with us, sir. Thank you very much. And the panelist, Mr. Jain Pavania, S Bank, Mr. Amar Singh, JP Morgan, Mr. George Alexander Muthoot Group, Mr. Albert Chang, SBMA, Mr. Sudesh Nambiat, IGPC, Mr. Ashwini Kapoor, MMTC Limited, Mr. Gorakhnath Yadav, India Government Mint, Mr. Shekhar Bhandari, Kotak Bank.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to start with a small joke, and I'll tell you why I'm starting with that joke. So I think all of us have heard the story of Androcles and the lion. And the story goes that there was this lion, and there was Androcles, and he was he helped the lion pulling out a thorn which was in his paws, and the lion remembered it. And years later, Androcles was caught for a crime and fed to the lion, and in the end, the lion let him away. Now the story goes that he's remembered about the paws and everything, but the real story is that just before the lion was going to eat Androcles, he said, "Androcles, any last wishes?" And he said, "I want to make some speech." And he said, "A speech? Thank you. That's the last thing I want," and let him go. So why I'm telling you this is because, gentlemen, we are sitting between lunch and the rest of the afternoon. So let's try and make this short and fast and yet get to the point. And with that, I'll come to what I think was a very, very important chapter of the Niti Aayog report. The Niti Aayog report really gets through the whole aspect of what gold means for this country. It starts with, and we had the session on talking about trading and the spot exchanges, but it's really getting that gold to be more efficient. Now, getting that gold, which is, as is said in many ways, lying under the pillows in India, getting that gold to really come out of that and become an efficient instrument. So without really getting too much into all the details of what the Niti Aayog panel said, I'm going to quickly jump to each one of the sort of recommendations of this panel. The chapter 3, as it is, talks about financialization of gold. It has about 5 or 6 key recommendations. And the way we're going to run it is just sort of give a brief glimpse of what that recommendation is, probably throw the question to a couple of panelists, and then we'll take it up from there with each of the recommendations. So the first one, and that was really on the gold monetization scheme, spoken about, discussed a lot, and the Niti Aayog essentially talked about that the long-term objective was to reduce the country's reliance on import to meet the domestic demand. But the panel really also had a lot of suggestions on improving it. It said that the mobilization of deposits, of course, as we know, is not as per expectations. And it's really important to understand why the non-participation is happening, who's really got the concerns. And here we have in this panel, and I'm going to ask maybe George Muthoot with his background, Sudesh, and maybe Shekhar, to really say what are those key things they think are required to get the GMS of the month.
Thank you, George Alexander Muthoot. Of course, we are also into the gold, but not into the gold trade. But we deal with a lot of gold. So, from my experience with these things, with the government's initiative, etc., one small thing which went against this is that the gold which we say is in India, in private hands, are ornaments. And the people don't want to part with that and change the content of change the character of that from an ornament to a bullion, etc. That is one of the things which went against this. So, quick thinking which comes to my mind first is, if we want to really monetize, maybe I am selfish in saying about our company, our business, we deal with, we have about 150 to 200 tons of gold with us, but ornaments of customers. But maybe about 5% of them actually abandon that gold, and that goes for auctions. So probably one way of that would be this gold which is auctioned can be actually given to the melted and given to the government, and they can use it in their way to make it come back to the system and reduce the imports to that extent. Today it is purchased by some people, but it is not going through the organized way fully. But now, if government also intervenes, this can take it there. This gold can come out to the government and it can actually substitute for imports and, as we say, help the balance of payment also. But having said that, monetizing the gold is what we do every day. We monetize the gold which is lying under your pillow. We ask them to bring it to us, and probably on that security of that, we give lot of advances. I think we are one of the leaders in that and the pioneers in doing that. Everybody is doing that. I think to that extent we have done it. But specifically on this point of Niti Aayog, etc., I feel that the money or the gold should come back to the government. And one way which we can help, or which I felt, was through this auctioning, which we do every year.
Sudesh, I think with your experience and now you're also doing a policymaker's role, how do we really get much more of the state-owned gold, the gold in various other places, and how do we really get more gold coming into this? Your views on the GMS?
Uh, first, we need to look at which is the goal that we're targeting at. Okay, the Household Finance Committee report that was published last August 2017. So it clearly lists out five main reasons for the gold holdings. One is hiding illicit proceeds. It is written there, and tax avoidance being the second. Third is the easily pledged form of collateral. Fourth is the cultural and behavioral determinants of gold holdings, and fifth is just for the desire to hold gold for consumption and not necessarily for investment. So, what we are targeting in terms of the GMS section is the latter three. And again, now moving to what would make this GMS more successful is or what made the GMS less successful after this last 3 years is because the structure of incentives that's there right from the customer who wants to deposit or to the CPTC or to the bank to refiner. The incentive structure is not well played out over there. When I say the customer who wants to deposit, he's not sure how the tax authorities are going to treat with the gold that is deposited there. And the banks they have it better play when it comes to importing the gold and then leasing it to the market. That makes an easy business for them. So we need to rework on the complete incentive structure from the customer till the banks, and unless that happens, it's not won't take off easily.
And since you're coming and talking about incentive structures, branches, I think Shekhar, you're the right person to take up the next point on GMS. And Jayant, you should add as well, because the banks, I think, were expected to be a key participant in this whole scheme. Where do you see the banks today? How can we make it more successful? And both of you, if you can just throw light on that.
I think right from beginning, we always understand there are three parts to make the GMS successful. One of the important part is collection, and then I think what do you do with that collection. I think if one were to see, customer will get attracted if there is some amount of marketing which is done. Second, I think the people who collect it have enough incentive to do it for them. Let us also see what is the use of the gold which is collected once it comes under GMS, and at what cost I think it gets collected. Currently, I think the economics still need to have some amount of justification for anyone I think who collects, and then I think make it work. The risks involved in the entire business seems significantly higher. Just to tell you an example, I think a person from Cochin comes in and gives me a kg of gold, and he wants that I think it should be under GMS. I need to collect it in Cochin branch, then send it for refining, check, and etc. Once that is done, then I have to ensure that I think that is then given it to any jeweler as so-called as GML, and then at what rate. If you were to see that I think cost of procuring, then I think processing, and then giving, if it comes to on an average, and along with that I think you have to give interest to the customer. I think it comes to on an average, and as per a back of annual calculation, somewhere around 4.5%, conservative basis. And this is excluding all the transportation costs and etc., which are also part of doing the entire costing. and then I think at what rate you can lend. So if you can't lend at probably higher than, I think, adding some amount of cost which you've incurred, and in the entire process you take a risk on a CPCT, then I think you generally realize that is it a viable proposition as of now. So there are recommendations with respect to how can you make it viable. One, the way the export was promoted, is there a way one can promote with a 3% subsidy to the banks? I think option one. Option two, can you use it as a part of a CRR and etc. It is part of the recommendations, but can it be qualified under CRR? Because banks currently have to keep, I think, 4% CRR. And I think a few more areas where you have the counterparty risks being taken by someone. A combination of 1 plus 2 plus 3 make it viability, then the marketability, and then the entire mobilization gains the momentum.
Hi everyone, this is Jayant from Yes Bank. I think if you look at the gamut of financial products, one thing very common in successful financial products is either there was a very strong push or there was a very strong pull from the consumer. Unfortunately, in GMS, there is neither a push nor a pull. So we may try decipher why there is not. So let's look at banks. What are the incentives for a bank to do it? Is it going to be a money spinner for the people involved in it? No. The cost structures, as Shekhar explained in detail, do not do not leave enough margins for the bank to create this into a profitable product. There are a lot of gaps in terms of unhedged risk in operating GMS. One of the biggest risk is the custom duty risk. You are accepting gold at a certain level of custom duty today, and when the gold comes for maturity, you do not know what levels of custom duty will be applicable. Second is this confusion between whether it is an outright product or is it a loan product. The current scheme provides for both. Now a bank cannot take something on loan and sell it outright and run a risk. So these are the kind of gaps which needs to be plugged before this can become a full-fledged financial product. On the consumer behavior aspect, I would like to state, see, if I were to broadly divide the consumer segment into two segments, one is the aware people, people like us sitting in this room, and the people who are not so aware. Now for the people who are aware, they are already well off. They don't need to worry about what is going to be the gold import for this country. And nobody wants to book losses behaviorally. So people who are aware, they are aware that their ornaments they are holding, that is not 99% pure gold. It is maybe 80%. I just checked my ring I am wearing in one of the machines put up by Fisher. It is only 75% gold. Now why will I am happy fooling myself that I am wearing a ring of certain few thousand rupees. But the moment I give it deposit in GMS, I get a shock, rude shock, that the jeweler cheated me. So
Okay, valid point. I think we need to work on that. So let me just move to one more aspect, which everybody agreed and said that for the GMS to succeed, the GML, and again similar sounding acronym, but the gold metal loan, as most of us know, is something which works in tandem. And again, suggestions to how the GML can be tweaked. Again, we have some eminent bankers here, and GML is something which is. But maybe Amar, you can take a shot at that first, and then again, happy to have Shekhar or Jayant or anybody else who wants to add on to it.
So first of all, very good afternoon, guys. I think few things are very, very clear, and I think I've been this time listening all the eminent speaker who spoke yesterday and today. I will rather put forward 2 points here, and I think that will take some of the questions which we are trying to solve. One, like yesterday, a lot of people talk about physical demand is slowing. What we are doing. Number two, like Mr. Khoslaji rightly mentioned today in the earlier part of the day, that the industry is changing. The shape of the way we were doing business for 20 years is changing and changing very rapidly. I think what is missing, the way I see, I think some of the point very rightly mentioned by Shekhar as well as Jayant and rest of the people. What is missing is infrastructure. Bullion Bank, if you look at in isolation whether gold deposit makes a sense for me, I can tell you It will not. So what is missing today, as a bank, you come forward and say, okay, I want to help and support, and GMS will not work overnight that suddenly you have 100 ton. This will not. So I think we are solving for two things. If you are just looking, can I mobilize and what is in for it, it is not going to work. But can I mobilize at 1% and can I lend at 3%? It will work. Then it comes all the nuances which Jan and Sekhar mentioned, like I don't know when I get the goal what it is. I think that is where someone like MMTC has heavily invested, and I think we should leverage their reach. I think we know how Turkey succeeded and has been a successful. I don't think we are creating something we can learn and we can implement. Second thing, these banks cannot hedge their risk. This is, in my view, the biggest. If I go to the board and say I want to mobilize 5-ton gold, but I don't know whether I lose 10% tomorrow or 20%, no one will approve. So I think first, and it is, I'm telling you, it's not 100 thing we are asking. What we are asking, give the banks at least tools to play around. Today you are saying you go and swim in the ocean, but your hands and all the legs are totally tight. So this is the biggest problem. The next problem is like addressing to the consumption. Everybody is here, including the traders and banks, are so heavily focused on physical. Sorry to say, but I think we have to learn and see physical is not where everybody makes money. But here, that's the only way today. But tomorrow, let's say, what else I should do? The millennial will like to trade app. They would like to buy and sell gold. Can you provide? I think these are the things to be addressed. You are worried about CAD. How do I address the import? You need to think through how do I give a financial product. So I can be long gold, but that gold is still in the economy. So one issue, bigger issue is GMS, which has many aspects like tax angle and declaration, etc. But how do we reduce the reliance on the physical import? Unless you give the product to the people, you will be discussing the same thing. And once we have the product, the bank will make all effort. And once the infrastructure is ready, there will be GMS, product will come forward. People will come forward and will deposit. But you cannot say, first you deposit, then I will give you rest of the thing. So it has to come all together. Thank you.
I think GML is one of the best products a jeweler can have in terms of hedging all the risks which are there in running the business. A jeweler is known for its manufacturing. I think it has its manufacturing margin, and what GML helps is to protect that part completely. So part one, I think it should be more popular, and it should be, if I were to put it, it should be compulsory on a jeweler to ensure that it forms part of the entire hedging situation which is there, which every jeweler has. So one has to hedge all the foreign exchange exposures, but not necessarily jewelry, or if you are taking GML. But second part, I think, is for GML. Is GML good? Yes, it is good. Will it work? It will work. But I think the cost of mobilization of GMS has to be significantly less than the realization which you get it on GML. If the two are not combined, which today is a challenge, you do find that the funding of GML is not happening through GMS, but will happen to alternative sources.
Let's move to one more topic, and I think, Albert, I'm going to come to you quickly because there's been a big suggestion in terms of how we can look at a gold savings account. And again, I think we've been talking about the millennials, we've been talking about how we can create newer products. And a gold savings account is something which has been spoken about, is something which everybody has sort of seen as a possible way of making this a better product. With your experts view and sitting outside of India, Albert, what would you say? Gold savings account, does it work? What do we need to make it work in India? Or what's your view about it?
Thank you. Before we address the gold saving account, let's revisit some of the basics. I mean, I echo Amar was just saying the most important thing is to build an infrastructure for the gold market here. But we must, and hence, you see the financial institution like commercial banks and also the establishment of the Shanghai Gold Exchange as a key infrastructure for the whole transformation of the China market. Likewise, I look at the report and it's amazing of how much detail that we can see from the report. And in this financialization of this gold market, financial sector institution has to play a main role. The spot exchange is one thing. I think the other part is to encourage commercial bank to gear up to the bullion banking business. And in gear up to bullion banking business, we cannot jump from one step that we want a full bullion banking business from day one. So we have to start from some vanilla product. I think gold saving account is a vanilla product that should be the key product to develop and has to take some time to fully develop it. And it is also in line with the GMS because government want to mobilize the pillow gold. And the pillow gold need to find a place to deposit. And someone need to give the trust to these people who has been kept it under the mattress for a long time because it's close to their heart. You need to find a home and you need to incentivize them to park what they have close to the heart. And the gold saving account, I think, is the vanilla product and it should be developed and it should be also forming in future the pool of liquidity that the bank will be able to extend loans and other banking business. I think that's my view on how it should develop.
Ashwini ji, I think MMTC has been a very integral part of a lot of the development in this sector. But since any topic which talks about inclusion and retail distribution, people then say, how are you going to get redemptions, etc. And I think with your experience, gold savings account, what role do you think you could play and how can gold savings account really succeed in this country?
The thing is that if you go back to the history in 1999, GDS was started just to mobilize the gold available above the earth in the households so that it can be financialized and can be come into the economy. Moreover, as the people have told that it will also ease out the CAD problem because imports will be lessened because it's already available in India. It is to be mobilized. Now, Mr. Muthoot, Mr. George told that nobody wants to part with the ornaments because it's a yellow metal, everybody has affinity. It's in the culture, basically Indian culture, it's since ancient times. But the making charges involved and all those things are there. But in spite of that, I'll come to know that I want to say that Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, he took the initiative and started the opening of the bank accounts, Jan Dhan Yojana and all this. And it's a record, you can see it is appreciated by all over global environment is happy about the same. And what we have been saying for the last forums in so many years, that gold is the affinity for the rural when the harvest gets cropped up and the people want to have, they don't want to get into the financial jargons. They just buy simply gold. With this Jan Dhan Yojana, the accounts are in place, KYC is in place, digitalization is in place, which is on the move. And the Make in India concept is there that we have to take it further. So linking of Jan Dhan Yojana accounts along with gold saving accounts and whatever the earnings a small person is having, or maybe he wants to buy, or he wants to deposit some gold also, GDS can be improved upon, gold can be deposited, even he can buy with the money also. So that can help in accumulation of the gold, and that gold definitely, it's in going the deposits, so that can be mobilized in various schemes, gold metal loans, and it can be used for other things in the gold, as we are taking in for the e-auctions, that also can be channelized. Then the short term, people will also getting incentives. So as a whole, a person who is depositing is also getting gained, economy is getting gained, it's a circle, what I understand. I should go for it.
Thank you. And since we are talking about the gold savings account, I think the next recommendation, which also comes from the Niti Aayog, and I think both of you are sitting next to each other and partners in that, is on the India gold coin. So maybe Gorakhnath-ji, your view on what really can we do to make the India gold coin. And I think there were a lot of aspects to that India gold coin. We can make it a very commemorative thing. We can make it aspirational to hold. So what are the various things you think can be done to make the India gold coin a success? And
associated with MMTC. Initially, we have done last year in 2015 to 16, we have done around 800 kg of gold, of Indian gold coin in denomination of 5, 10 and 20. My view is whenever it is going to market and World Gold Council and then Indian Gold, World Gold Council and MMTC is going to promote our product. I have seen many posters and banners where they have not given any benefit to the customer, how they are benefited if they are buying to India Gold coin in different denomination. First thing, I will tell you in this platform what MMTC has given and what India government mint has done. We have given a positive tolerances in terms of weight and purity. We are giving 999 on printing 999, but always it is 999.5 to 999.7. And in terms of weight, it is from positive tolerance is plus 2 milligram to 10 milligram, which is beneficial to the customers. And one more thing, what we are telling, how it is popularized. See, during a recent meeting, we have discussed along with MMTC and Ministry how it is popularized. As recommended, if we design in such a manner like mint, any goddess or any god portrayed on the gold coin, it will be more popular. But one more thing I want to add. During marketing, if you give all these parameters to or popularize these parameters, along with it is minted, it is already written on that certificate, it is asset and manufactured by India government mint. But if it is, it will be more popular if you make a banner or marketed to mention it is manufactured at asset and manufactured at India government mint. So it will be more popularized, and now we are lacking, we are asking about, we have 200 kg gold left. More demand will come and MMTC will not fulfill the market demand. I'm sure.
Ashwini, your views.
The thing is that India was lacking any national coin of its own. So many countries have. We look at USA, China. So it was a good idea conceived by Honorable Prime Minister. And the need of the hour was also there, the CAD problems and all those things, and standardization of the gold is as it's going on. So the IGC was part of the GMS, and it was introduced, started by Honorable Prime Minister on 5th November 2015. As he rightly said, Mr. Yadav, that 800 kgs were allocated. It was only totally from GMS. No gold was imported for the same. The thing was that the two main concepts why the IGC was introduced. One was the Make in India. It has to be done in India. Second, to solve the problem of imports. But it has to be circulated all over India and to be channelized as a currency, because gold is currency. So some standardized product has to be there apart from the national pride. So rightly said that there are no idol or religious can be put because people have sentiments about it. So keeping it a patriotic and religious thing, it was Ashok Chakra on the one side and Mahatma Gandhi ji on the second side. In fact, Mint supported us like anything, and BIS also supported us because there was no 999 standards in India, and it was set up for IG Mint because only 995 was there. Then we started, after that, all the gold was manufactured by IG Mint and it was went into circulation. over a period of, we started 7 banks who are holding the GMS gold in these coins also. Apart from the same, we have now tied up with the electronics in the technology department, where there are a common service center is the 106. We have approached the centers in district level to have about 2.75 centers from where it can be digitalized, gold can be sold. The only thing is popularity. The government has been popularizing this GMS scheme, but they should lay stress on IGC sales also, because the ease of dealing in currency, what we are talking about national spot exchange, anybody can go and sell. So if the standardized coin is there with the buying and selling price all over India, the uniform, which is, so the people will be more comfortable. Whenever the need of hour, they can sell on the same price, and whatever the declared by government of India through MMTC, and can be sold. Secondly, the channels are to be increased, as I told you. We are tying up with the post offices also, and I should, we should say that it's our national pride also, and we should go for it. And it can, whatever the gold more mobilized in the GMS can be used for manufacturing of IGC.
Add a point here.
Yeah.
I think you could have easily crossed 800 kgs, 18 kgs to say. The reason is why just restrict to just just one refinery or one company just going to mint it. There are, how the process ideally should have been that many refineries should have been accredited to or be given the permission to mint these coins, and banks should be able to directly deal with those refiners and the India Gold coin. So when that loop, when the system develops towards that level, then you would have more incentive for the various players in the market.
So you're saying just increase the participation both in
increase
terms
the
of the supply
participation.
side and the distribution side.
Right. Currently, the incentive is being split between multiple layers. So due to which you have a higher, the customer pays a higher margin because of that. Very good.
The thing is that, as we told, 2015 we started at 100 kgs of gold, and we are able to sell only 680 kgs so far, in spite of having so many channels. So it's not a question of demand. Demand is the main concern, not making more.
But I think, like we always say, you don't really know how market forces will work, right? So it may be worth experimenting.
Also, I want to add something for easy availability of Indian gold coin, because I'm sitting in a very posh area of Mumbai, and from everywhere people searching for Indian gold coin, which is available at SBI counter, Indian Overseas Bank, and maybe Federal. They have
Correct. But you're right. I think
some agreement with
correct.
different bank also, but it is not available in rural market, which is necessary, because everybody wants to buy good quality gold, and everybody knows it is launched by government of India. So everybody have faith. Then if it is they do agreement with different post offices, post office which is available in entire India and in rural area also. If it is available, it will be 100% successful. Thank
So
you.
we'll come to the last recommendation. I'll just sort of pose this
I
one.
have a very small question
Yeah.
for MMTC. Would you consider putting this coin for sale on some of the popular e-commerce website,
Definitely.
so that the person does not even have to visit a branch or a post office, as you were
As
mentioning?
we told that we have already tied up with Electronics Niketan, Government of India, for 106 at the district levels. So it is going to be digitalized soon. It will be
Something
online.
like a Amazon or Flipkart, where a user can just log in and check what the price is, and also buy it very conveniently.
The thing is that being a government coin and all those things, first we want to go ahead with the government channels available. When the popularity gains, then we'll move to other channels. That is the purpose.
So we'll come to the last recommendation of this chapter, which is really on the sovereign gold bond. Again, there was a lot of hope that this instrument will really create an alternative instrument, take away the demand for physical gold, something like what you were referring to, Amar. But it really didn't take off again. So just, and this one I'll just ask Amar, Sudesh, and maybe Albert to again comment on this. Something like the sovereign gold bond, why do you think it didn't take off, and can we do something to tweak it Because the recommendations are really saying we should make some efforts to revamp it. Now that's very, very, like, it doesn't say really much. So what would you specifically think we should do to get the sovereign gold bond scheme successful?
I think Sekhar will be the best to answer this, but I think the people who are buying this, as some of our other colleagues mentioned here, is not really, do they really understand bond? Means he's mentioning some of our ultimate user or buyers. It is not you and me who knows bond in and out. So it is people who, the moment you say bond, his mind doesn't work. So I think the best way is to keep it simple and to make it something which understand, which Albert just mentioned. Now, due to the large effort post demonetization, opening account, I think if somehow like gold account, I think that is something which every individual, at least they understand what gold account. But now, can you offer this? Most of these accounts, please correct me, I'm Jayant and Sekhar, is opened by all the nationalized banks. I'm talking more on the rural segment. If they don't know how to hedge, how to manage their risk, or even you don't give the tool, how can they go and create this business? So again, I'm going back, you go and say, I'll do gold accumulation, I'll do this scheme, I'll do that scheme. But first of all, give the banker to create the right product. And that is not, in my view, it is not very, very difficult. We have China's success, and China, as Albert mentioned, 15 years ago, people, when I was in ICICI, China was not existent. It was all India, India. Today, I tell you, Asian liquidity is as big as London or New York liquidity. People look at SG, what kind of liquidity up is going on. Physical demand, financial product, and we do have visibility on China. I can tell you we can be better, but we need to get some of the very basic products right. And the only way I can see, if RBI opens up, some of the banks, which is very smart bankers are here in Mumbai and all the private and public sectors, they know. But what we need, some of the right regulations that will make it happen. But we need some right regulations.
So I think just to come here on my opinion on sovereign gold bonds, I think one is the total amount which has been mobilized is around 5,000 crores. Yes, it is less than what government had thought of. But when one looks at the number of customers which it has, I will say I think it has been a good scheme. So yes, we may think, I think it is not in terms of 15,000 crores and etc. And when you have more than 10 million customers on sovereign gold bonds, I think this is something which takes time. It seeps in. Yes, could have been marketed a bit better. I think the answer would have been marketing more rather than whether the product is good. Product is good, small denominated, priced well, marketed in terms of good marketability across exchanges. I think all those parts are fine. If I were to tell you the response of the wealth clients, I think it is excellent. So all the high-end guys like that product well, and they have invested in that product because they understand it well. Also, I think we have to attribute some part to the return on gold. And always remember that if the return on gold is not good or not perceived to be good, people would take this product at an appropriate time rather than, I think, investing in now. To come to the second part, I think, which Amar mentioned, important part is in order to have a gold savings account, you do require hedging to be permissible. I think we did a product development, ran through, I think, a critical base, and I think it was overwhelmingly bought out, except that I think banks are not permitted to hedge a couple of things in the marketplace.
Quick, maybe Albert.
Very quick one. I echo Amma and Sekhar's idea about what he had just presented. But if we have to go back to the government, this gold bond, if your target audience is sophisticated, high net worth customer, or you are reaching a very high level of sophisticated investor, that's the product. But I guess if that is not a priority, let's go back to basic. And I still like to advocate that we have a lot of smart bankers, as Amar said, that let them create product which customer wants. And gold saving account is still the best, the most vanilla product of all other products. Thank you.
Quick one on the sovereign gold bond. And to add to while agreeing to all the points, one that's important is a product that has an inheritance in there. So, and second being, it should be physically redeemed. If these two are being brought in, then the sovereign gold bond would find a lot more attraction among the.
Sure. So, last comment.
Last comment. See, we should see this problem as two. One, we have about 20,000 tons of gold with us, 22,000 in India. I don't know how much is it in ornaments, but I generally should feel that 75% of it should be in ornaments. What do we do about that? How do we monetize that? How do we bring that? So we have seen that asking people to bring that to the to bank or somewhere, and then asking them to melt it and make it change it from an ornament to something else. It has not been successful. So can we think of something by which the ornament is still the ornament and still government can get? Think of something. Today I think you are not trying to solve that. Unless you solve that, this 20,000 tons will not come out. People have some sentiment they are keeping in the ornament. Give some scheme so that ornament is ornament, he can get it after 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. The second is the import substitution. That I think all the other things are there, but as everybody said, I think it takes time. It takes time, but I don't know how much time. Thank you.
So questions, and I think the top 4 questions all reflect that when you have some disagreement in the panel, it generates more questions, right? So all the questions are really about the India gold coin. Great success, I think, till now. But I think everybody's still saying, why can't we make the distribution just as large as it can be, right? So I know, Ashwini, it's a touchy topic, but I guess maybe we can work towards making this, and not just one bank or 2 banks, but make it a wider distribution. If you can just sort of move on to so the next question after the first 3. So the first one is really on IGC. How many banks are active in the GMS scheme? I don't have that number offhand, but I don't know amongst the bankers, again, if is there anybody active really in the GMS scheme? No.
5 to 6 banks which are active, and again it is a risk management framework which has to get acceptable, and there has to be viability part which has to be there in everyone's framework.
I think you already said that if we can make it attractive for the distribution channel, then it will make more banks come in.
Actually, what India government Mint has approaches to many banks like SBI, Overseas Bank, ICICI Bank, Central Bank, Punjab National Bank, and Syndicate Bank. Only 2 bank has approached, come to us for agreement, and apart from 2, only 1 is active, like SBI. Only SBI is active. Syndicate Bank is not active till date. Agreement we have done in around 1.5 years back, but they have not submitted, put at any gold.
So maybe like people are suggesting, the answer is to go to the non-traditional or the newer channels, and I think using the online route might be a good option, and that's something we should look at. If you can just, what kind of tax or other incentives can be looked at to promote adoption of GMS? Again, I think the bankers, Shekhar and others, told us really more in terms of what the banks would need to make GMS attractive. Yes, I think IGC should be sold online. If we get an agreement here today, we should make that proposal, and I will request the organizers to maybe send a note on that. Who owns the success or failure of India old coin? Actually, I don't know the answer, but I think for a lot of these things, I think all of us collectively own the success or failure, because like he said, they are really not stopping many banks from coming in, but they need to make more channels available. So it's a collective thing. Let's make it a success. You're right, PhonePe should be allowed, and I think there's a gentleman from PhonePe here, but I think online distribution should be allowed. And last question, how can we leverage the emerging trend of financial investment products? I still think it's the banks which will be, and the newer distribution, because in the business we are as well, what we find is that the biggest challenge in India is still distribution. You have to have every possible channel to reach the end customer. If we can get our distribution right, I think we'll get this right. With that, a big thank you to all the panelists, and let's hope we can make the chapter 3 really deliver what it wants to in terms of financialization. Thank you, everyone.
And now I would request Mr. Mrunga Branchpe, Managing Director and CEO of MCX, to present the memento to the panelists. Mr. Jain Pavania is bank. Mr. Amar Singh, JP Morgan. Mr. George Alexander Muthoot Group. Mr. Albert Chang, SBMA. Mr. Sudesh Nambiat, IGPC. Mr. Ashwini Kapoor, MMTC Limited. Mr. Goraknath Yadav. Mr. Shekhar Bhandari, Kotak Bank. And a big round of applause to the moderator and the panelist. And now may I request Mr. Suresh Hundia to come and present the memento to Mrugang Pranjpe. And yes, we cannot forget about the group photo.